We are live.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is a slightly new experience for the members of the Niagara Regional Police Services Board. This is our public meeting of the Niagara Regional Police Service Board for Thursday, the 23rd of April, commencing at 8:30 in the morning, being conducted via teleconference and practicing social distancing guidelines as directed by the Government of Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, and as well as public health officers for Ontario and the region. To start this morning, I will start with a roll call. I will start with myself as Ken Gansell, Chair of the Board, William Steele, Vice Chair of the Board, Board members Tara McKendrick, Board members Henry DeAngela, Board members Bob Gale, Board members Kevin Gibson, and Board member David Eek. Hope I didn't miss anyone. And online as well is the senior staff of the police service, which is Chief Brian McCulloch, Deputy Chief Bill Forty, Deputy Chief Brett Flynn, Superintendents White, Ash, and Mead, and our two directors, Lisa DeChellis, I'm going to screw this one up, Donatus DeChellis, and Director Akram School, as well as the solicitor for the police service, Wanda Shees. Any declaration of any of the board members on the call this morning? Not hearing any. I will move on to the items on the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, which is items number 37 and 38. I would request a mover and block for those two items. One is the public meeting and one is the public accommodations meetings. The last face-to-face public meeting was on February 27th, and the accommodations meeting was on Thursday, March the 12th. So I could have a mover and seconder, please.
So moved, Henry DeAngela.
You, Henry, a seconder?
Seconder, Dave Eek.
Okay, I heard David Eek first, so David Eek wins that one. I will ask a vote in favor of that. I'm going to.
Ken, Bob Gale has a question.
Yes, Bob, go ahead, please.
If you'll permit, through to you, to Deb. Deb, items number 32, 34, and 35 on the public minutes about the donations. I know your answer is going to be yes, but I want to put it on record. Are you keeping track of the events that we donate to that are canceled? Example, the OAPSB Spring Conference. I don't think it's been redated. I think it's just been canceled so that we aren't given the money or we get the money back.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, Deb Reed. We are keeping track, and we have received reimbursement for the special fund request. However, we have also received a new request from the OAPSB to sponsor virtual AGM, and that will be something that the board will have to consider separately.
Okay, I won't ask this question later on the other ones then. I know you're keeping track of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we any additional questions on those two items, 37 and 38? Not hearing any. I'm going to stick to the same procedure I used the last time. Is there anybody who wishes to vote in opposition to those two items? Please advise now. Not hearing any, then I will consider this to be voted in favor of items 37 and 38. Next is reports from myself, and I will go through the board chair's remarks. The board believes, wanted to have a bit of a comment on our teleconference meeting. The board believes that holding our monthly meetings is a way at this time and is appropriate and responsible approach to the current circumstances as government, public health authorities, members of the public all work together to address the unique and difficult challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to thank everyone for joining us today on the board's first teleconference meeting, and I want to recognize the Niagara Regional residents, members of the media, Niagara Regional Police staff, and who are listening online, and thank you all for your support and staying connected during these difficult times. These are unprecedented times that we are living through. Our daily updates from the Prime Minister and Premier are stark reminders about our current reality. As the pandemic continues to evolve, I want to take a moment to thank Chief McCulloch, his executive leadership team, but more importantly, our uniformed members and civilian members of the Niagara Regional Police who are working around the clock to keep the Niagara residents safe and secure. These women and men are working under difficult circumstances with rules and processes that are changing daily. It is also critically important that the board is able to continue with its governance and oversight work. While we can't meet in person, as we normally do, these difficult times require us to think differently about how we conduct our business. We are doing the best we can, and we are thankful for everyone that has worked to get to this point. This is our first public telemeeting, and we've taken a lot of measures to ensure that this telemeeting runs smoothly. But please be patient with us, as we would have a hiccup or some other technical issue. With that said, I'm going to proceed with today's agenda, which I've already started. Although this meeting is taking place by telephone, we want to acknowledge the land we are on as we make this call as the traditional territory of First Nations people. In particular, we recognize and thank the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people for their stewardship of these lands over the millennia, and we also wish to thank all First Nations people in Canada for their ongoing and important roles in caretaking of the lands beneath our feet, wherever we stand on Turtle Island. Before we begin today's order of business, I would like to take a moment to grieve with the people of Nova Scotia for the tragic events that happened last weekend. I would like to honor RCMP Constable Heidi Stevenson and all victims and families of those who lost their lives so tragically through an act of shameless violence. Words cannot express the tremendous grief experienced by our nation. Please join me in a moment of silence as we mourn the tragic loss in that province. Our deepest sympathies go out to victims and families and friends, and we will now pause for a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much for that. We've done the roll call already this morning. Our next item is a report from the Chief of Police. So I'll turn that over to Chief McCulloch. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair. I'll first provide an update with regards to COVID-19. Obviously, that's had a significant impact on our operations. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, this has been an unprecedented time for our service, the citizens of the Niagara region, and quite frankly, across the globe. We are alive to the seemingly constant changes to the situation as it pertains to the Niagara region, and ultimately the impact that it's having on our members. We continue to see the fluidity of the situation with evolving Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act emergency orders, and recently an extension of all emergency orders until May 12, 2020 by Premier Doug Ford. This unfortunately will be our new normal, at least for the time being. The service is focused on ensuring the health and safety of our members and meeting regularly to ensure that we are prepared and the proper measures are in place for the continuous safety of our members. It's important to note that this is primarily a public health issue, and we're ensuring that we are following the guidance of public health and medical professionals when making decisions that impact our members and ensuring the information that's shared with them is both reliable and accurate. We're also working with various stakeholders, of which include the municipalities, Niagara Region, and participation in the Emergency Operations Center to help guide us through these evolving times. Included with this mutual cooperation framework, members of the service have at times assisted municipal bylaw officers in ensuring the compliance of emergency orders through education and in some cases through being present when necessary enforcement action has been taken for offenses committed. I want to thank all of the municipalities, and in particular their enforcement personnel, in managing and dealing with the various evolving emergency orders and in responding to the various issues and concerns that have been identified within their communities. This no doubt has increased their workload, and their efforts are certainly recognized and very much appreciated. I can advise that according to the service's most recent numbers, we've received 212 COVID-19 specific calls for service related to the emergency orders. Included in these calls, 51 involve education and or warnings issued by our officers, and 75 were forwarded to respective municipal bylaw offices for further action. As it pertains to personal protection equipment or PPE, we've certainly heard a lot about that in recent weeks on newscasts. Fortunately, at this time, our service has an adequate supply of N95 masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, and sanitized wipes. This supply and the supply chains will continually be monitored and assessed, taking a proactive approach to ensure that proper amounts of personal protective equipment are retained in stock for any potential future realities. Members of the service, while having been directed on the appropriate use of personal protection equipment when necessary, have also been instructed in the responsible use of such equipment to ensure that the use of PPE equipment is not exhausted at an unwarranted rate. Recently, the province of Ontario has indicated the potential for the reuse of PPE in the event we experience a shortage due to the protracted duration of the pandemic. We're currently working through various procedures and processes to safely collect discarded PPE, particularly masks, and we've also taken steps to ensure the increased sanitation of our facilities, vehicles, and equipment, of which includes providing direction to our members and steps that should be taken to protect themselves from exposure during their tour of duty. The service has also taken steps to address human resource considerations. These include a redeployment strategy should the service be impacted by sworn members becoming ill or required to stay home due to self-isolation or quarantine. This has meant the redeployment of officers from certain specialty units to work shifts concurrent with various frontline personnel, which will allow for quick deployment or quick redeployment if required. As it pertains to absenteeism, on March 31st, 2020, the service experienced a high point of 92 members, both sworn and civilian, that were absent from the workplace, specifically related to COVID-19 concerns. Of those numbers, 9.78% were frontline uniform officers. This included members that were asymptomatic, symptomatic, and self-isolated due to contact with a suspected or confirmed positive COVID-19 individual. As of yesterday, April 22nd, 2020, the service had a decrease in absenteeism with 34 members out of the workplace due to COVID-19 related reasons, of which 6 members are awaiting COVID testing or COVID-19 test results, 4 members being symptomatic, 6 members in self-isolation, and currently 18 members out of the workplace due to being identified as high-risk individuals. However, 6 of these members are working remotely from home. Of these members, only 5 frontline uniform members, representing 1.5% of our total frontline uniform strength, are absent due to COVID-19 related issues. As of this date, the NRPS has no confirmed cases of COVID-19 affecting any of its members, sworn or civilian. The service has also conducted a critical functions analysis determining which members are able to work from home when provided necessary technical equipment such as laptops. While these numbers could fluctuate to demand, I can advise that currently 71 members of the service, predominantly civilians, However, some sworn staff as well are currently working from home. Another 115 members are currently involved in various shift rotations, sometimes working from home and sometimes working from the workplace when required. Also, in response to the COVID-19 situation, the service has enacted a mobile support unit, which is able to respond to lower priority calls for service, alleviating pressures on our frontline officers. Where an officer would normally attend a location for a call for service, an officer is now able to take a report by phone where it's appropriate to do so. This also minimizes unnecessary physical interaction between officers and members of the public when appropriate, thus keeping within the spirit of physical distancing during these difficult times. Initially, when the emergency orders were enacted on March 17, 2020, the Niagara Regional Police Service experienced a significant drop in volume of calls for service. Since then, the calls for service volume has steadily increased. Currently, we're running below pre-pandemic levels at 93% of calls for service compared to pre-pandemic levels. As already stated, there has and continues to be COVID-19 related calls for service. However, there has been no significant deviation of calls for service in respect of the geographical area as it pertains to any vulnerable group or any serious breaches of the peace related to the pandemic. As part of this process, the service has in place a pandemic business continuity plan, which serves as a blueprint for steps to be taken during such an event that we're experiencing now. Part of the plan addresses the need for the service to cancel time off, which includes annual leave, float, and statutory holiday entitlement, in order to maintain frontline operations. As of this date, I can advise that the service has been able to maintain adequate staffing levels that resultantly do not require the cancellation of scheduled time off. And if for some reason cancellation of time off was to occur at a future date and for a protracted period of time, this would likely have a significant financial impact on our budget that would be unprecedented. For member situational awareness and to ensure that they are privy to all of the timely relevant developments as it pertains to COVID-19 and any emergency orders enacted as a result, I've been communicating with service members regularly, utilizing mass email messaging and through virtual town hall meetings, allowing members to ask questions through electronic means so that I'm able to address their concerns while still maintaining the physical distancing requirements. In addition to the original mass email that I sent out to our members on March 9th, 2020, I have since sent out 31 update mass email messages to ensure that members have the most current information. And as members of the board are well aware, these updates are also forwarded to your Executive Director, Deb Reed, who in turn forwards those messages to yourselves so that you are all aware of the developments as it pertains to our operating in the era of COVID-19. I also want to mention the cooperation and concern on the part of the Niagara Regional Police Association and the Senior Officers Association through these unprecedented times. In fact, we have an NRPA representative that sits on our Pandemic Business Continuity Committee as we navigate through the various issues and emergency orders. The associations have shown flexibility in the application of the collective agreements, of which include staggered start times for tour of duty and the temporary cessation of required two-person patrol vehicles in certain districts, all in order to practice the proper physical distancing. I must mention that currently there is still one exception to the two-person patrol vehicles, and that is when a recruit officer is assigned to a coach officer for training purposes. Regardless of any exceptions made to the collective agreements, the service will continue to work within the boundaries of any collective agreement through these COVID-19 times and continue to work collaboratively with both the Niagara Region Police Association and the Senior Officers Association. I'm aware that there has been an inquiry as it pertains to succession planning at the command level of the service in the event members of the command are unable to perform their duties as a result of the pandemic. Succession planning has always been an integral part of the service's strategy long before COVID-19 was on the radar. The service is well equipped for members to move into another role or step up in a rank should that need arise. However, saying this, we are alive as to developments that may occur and continually assess as to options going forward. I will also add that internally we have taken steps to conduct meetings, which prior were conducted by many members being present in the same room, to virtual meetings, thus maintaining physical separation, minimizing contact amongst command staff. And this is in addition to the internal measures that have been taking place to ensure cleanliness and the regular disinfection of our office space. While I've only described some of the steps taken by our service in response to the COVID-19 issue, I can assure you that many aspects of employee well-being and service delivery are continually being assessed and addressed. The steps taken to comply with various emergency orders, one of which was received a week and a half ago, as to mandated reporting requirements to the ministry as it pertains to compliance checks under the emergency orders. I do want to offer heartfelt thanks to all members of the Niagara Regional Police Service Pandemic Business Continuity Committee, of which includes, as previously stated, representation from the Niagara Region Police Association, who first met on March 12th to address the anticipated arrival of the COVID-19 virus to our region and its potential impact. The committee consists of approximately 25 senior leaders from across the service to ensure that we're well positioned to continue to support all of our members while fulfilling our mandate to public safety. They've worked late evenings, weekends to address various COVID-19 health concerns and navigate the evolving emergency orders, usually received with little or no advance notice, and ensuring internal systems and procedures are quickly put in place to ensure that our personnel are safe and we relay the necessary information and enforcement legislation to our frontline members so they can be operationally effective. I will also add that the committee meets regularly addressing and documenting any new issues, concerns, or actions that are taken. I also want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the members of the service who in their own way have and continue to contribute through this pandemic to ensure the safety of all members in our community. Now more than ever, the public looks to the police service for reassurance and to continue our commitment to keep our communities safe. And I again offer my sincere thanks for their continued professionalism throughout these uncertain times. We as a service and the citizens we serve have a long road ahead, and we must all be diligent and patient with the realities of life today, which includes fear of illness, isolation from our extended families, physical distancing, closure of non-essential businesses, just to name a few. This will no doubt be a slow and careful recovery process in getting back to normal as best we can. I'd also like to offer my sincere thanks to the board for your support throughout the COVID-19 situation. I provided a lot of information up until this point. I have some additional comments, but perhaps it's a good time to ask if the board has any questions or comments with regards to our COVID-19 response.
Thank you, Chief. Board members, any questions of the Chief? I would just like to echo the thanks from the Chief. The board stands with you on these issues during these times, but more importantly, from the press releases I see coming out, our police service has not taken the back seat to crime. There has been a lot of good news from a policing perspective on solving a number of crime issues, even one from last fall, dealing with a shooting in downtown St. Catharines and a number of arrests. So The importance is we are still out there, we are still policing, and it speaks extremely well of the men and women that are out on patrol, as well as the detectives and other support staff, including communications and our 911 dispatch center that is working 24/7. Again, it just shows that Niagara Regional Police is committed to the citizens and visitors of this region. So, Chief, back to you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to provide an update with regards to the International Association of Women in Policing Conference that was scheduled to be hosted here in Niagara in 2021. As you're well aware, with the support of the board, the Niagara Regional Police Service made preparations for a bid to host the International Association of Women in Policing Annual Training Conference for 2021. The IAWP has been in existence in some form or another since 1915 to educate and enlighten the public about women in law enforcement activities throughout the world and to provide support and education for women in policing and related activities. In September of 2019, members of the service presented a bid at the IAWP Annual Training Conference in Alaska to host the 2021 IAWP Annual Training Conference in Niagara Falls, and we were successful in winning that bid. Resultantly, the IAWP Training Conference was scheduled to be held locally at the Scotiabank Centre September 20th to 24th in 2021. On April 14th of 2020, I received notification from the IAWP board that the annual conference scheduled for Indonesia in September of 2020 had been postponed in light of the global COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, the Indonesian annual training conference scheduled for 2020 has been deferred until September 2021. Further, as a result of this decision, the IAWP annual conference scheduled for Niagara Falls in 2021 has now been deferred until September of 2022. Just to be clear, we're not obliged to bid on the 2022 conference. It's strictly a deferral from 2021 to 2022, and we'll continue to be hosting this event. Although the decision is not ideal, and we were very much looking forward to hosting the conference in 2021, which would have represented our 50th anniversary as a police service, I've indicated to the IAWP that we would work with them and support their decision in light of the pandemic. We'll now be tasked with selecting appropriate dates for 2022, as well as securing venues and hotels that coincide with those dates. I want to reaffirm that the service remains fully supportive of hosting the 2022 conference in Niagara Falls, and we will work with the co-chairs and organizing committee to bring this endeavor to a successful realization. And we look forward to the board's continued support of this initiative. Just want to bring the board's awareness to an SIU case closure. On August 16th of 2019, a Niagara Regional Police Service officer was operating his police vehicle westbound on Woodland Road in the city of Welland when he observed a motorcycle with a single occupant traveling eastbound on the same roadway at a high rate of speed. The officer activated his roof lights in order to safely make a U-turn in an attempt to follow the motorcycle. Once the U-turn was completed, the officer deactivated his emergency equipment and continued east on Woodlawn Road at a normal rate of speed. It was shortly after this that the Niagara Regional Police received reports of a collision at Woodlawn and River Road in Welland, where a motorcycle was involved in a collision with a civilian vehicle. Various emergency services attended this location, and unfortunately a 25-year-old male operator of the motorcycle was pronounced deceased at the scene. There was also indication that the motorcycle involved in the collision was the same one that had just passed the Niagara Regional Police officer on Woodlawn Road at a high rate of speed. Given the death of the motorcyclist and the potential police involvement prior to the fatal motor vehicle collision, the SIU was notified and invoked their mandate to investigate. The SIU designated one subject officer and 4 witness officers. On Monday, April 20th of this year, our service received notification from SIU Interim Director Joseph Martino. In his closure letter, he advised the SIU had concluded their investigation and there were no grounds for criminal charges against any officer. Also, there were no concerns expressed by the SIU Director in his notification letter. The SIU further commented that the subject's officer's conduct at all times appeared to have been prudent, well considered, and in the best interest of public and the safety of all users of the roadway. Another SIU closure that we received notification on relates to an incident that occurred on March 3rd, 2019. Uniform officers from 2 districts responded to an address in Niagara Falls in regards to a male that had been stabbed. Upon arrival, officers located a 55-year-old male with stab wounds. The injuries to the victim were later determined to be non-life-threatening. The victim pointed to another male on the street, stating that he was responsible for assaulting him. As the officers attempted to arrest the male, he violently resisted the arrest. Conducted energy weapons were deployed, and the male tried to disarm the police officers. The officers used multiple use of force options to gain control and handcuff the male. The male accused was transported to the Greater Niagara General Hospital for assessment since he displayed symptoms similar to excited delirium. Following a medical assessment, the physician determined that the accused had sustained a nasal bone fracture. As a result of the diagnosis of serious injury being the fracture, which was alleged to have occurred during an interaction with police officers, the Special Investigation Unit was notified and invoked their mandate. The SIU designated 3 subject officers and 4 witness officers. On Tuesday, April 21st, our service received notification from SIU Interim Director Joseph Martino. In his closure letter, he advised that the SIU had concluded their investigation and there were no grounds for criminal charges against any officer. Just with regards to our 2020 homicide and attempt homicide statistics, in the reporting period of February 25th to April 21st, we had 1 homicide and 1 attempted murder. I'll provide some further details on that. And just by way of comparison, in 2020 we had 2 homicides, 2019 we had 6 homicides, 2018 2 homicides, 2017 3, and in 2016 we had 1 homicide. First, relating to the Niagara Falls homicide, on March 29th, 2 district uniform officers responded to the rural area of Marshall Road and Fort Road in the city of Niagara Falls following a report of found human remains. Further investigation at the scene revealed that the found human remains were located in a wooded area and were that of a male. A post-mortem was conducted on March 30th, 2020. The deceased was confirmed to be a 23-year-old male from Toronto. Due to evidence gleaned, this matter was treated as a homicide investigation. On April 4th, 2020, a 21-year-old male and a 20-year-old female, both of Scarborough, were arrested and each charged with second-degree murder. A 25-year-old male and a 22-year-old male were also arrested and each charged with accessory after the fact to murder. The investigation remains ongoing. In regards to the attempt homicide, on Saturday, April the 11th, 2020, 3 district uniform officers responded to a residence on Ridge Road in the city of Welland following a report of a disturbance. Further investigation at the scene revealed that a 35-year-old male assaulted a 37-year-old male victim with a weapon prior to fleeing the scene. The victim was treated by EMS and transported to a local hospital for assessment before being airlifted to an out-of-town hospital with life-threatening injuries. The 35-year-old male was eventually located in St. Catharines and arrested and charged with attempted murder and uttering threats. The victim in this matter is now expected to survive and remains in hospital recovering from injury. injuries. Both males are known to each other, and the matter is now before the courts. Just with regards to traffic fatality and serious collision statistics, there were 3 fatal motor vehicle collisions and 2 life-threatening injury motor vehicle collisions in the months of February and March of 2020. So as of March 31st, we've had 3 fatal collisions. Comparatively, in 2019, for the entire year, we had 13. In 2018, we also had 13. 2017, we had 16. 2016, we had 16. And in 2015, we had 15. So again, we are trending favorably in that regards. Some details with regards to one of the fatal collisions that occurred on February 21st, 2020. Our officers responded to a report of a pedestrian who had been struck by a motor vehicle on Lundy's Lane near Kaler Road in the city of Niagara Falls. Investigation determined that a 79-year-old female was walking southbound across Lundy's Lane east of Kaler Road. Also at this time, a Ford pickup truck being operated by a 56-year-old male was proceeding eastbound in the eastbound curb lane of Lundy's Lane. The pickup truck struck the pedestrian. The pedestrian was transported by EMS to a local hospital without vital signs, where she was pronounced deceased. There were no passengers in the pickup truck, and the driver sustained no physical injury. This collision remains under investigation by our collision reconstruction unit. On Wednesday, March the 4th, 2020, our officers responded to a report of a motor vehicle into a pond at a rural residence on Foss Road in the town of Pelham. Investigation determined that an 80-year-old male was operating his Cadillac motor vehicle on the property when, for an unknown reason, the vehicle entered the man-made pond. When the Cadillac was located, the male was found inside suffering from hypothermia. The male was transported to a local hospital by EMS, and unfortunately on March 15, 2020, the male passed away in hospital. The incident is being attributed to driver error or a medical event on the part of the driver. The collision reconstruction unit continues to investigate this matter. On Thursday, March 19th, our officers responded to a report of a collision involving an e-bike on Drummond Road near Dunn Street in the city of Niagara Falls. The investigation determined that a 52-year-old male was operating his e-bike southbound on Drummond Road north of Dunn Street when he lost control of the e-bike and fell to the ground. The male was treated at the scene by EMS and transported to a local hospital where he was pronounced deceased. Emergency medical personnel at the hospital advised that the injuries to the male were not consistent with falling from the bike, however more consistent with being struck by a motor vehicle. As a result, the collision reconstruction unit was notified and continued the investigation. As the investigation continued, it was determined that after the male lost control of his e-bike, that he had fallen to the ground and was struck by a Mazda motor vehicle that was also traveling southbound on Drummond Road. The Mazda motor vehicle did not stop and left the scene. It was eventually determined that a 26-year-old male was driving the Mazda at the time of the collision, and he has since been charged with failing to remain at the scene of the accident, contrary to the criminal code, and that investigation continues as well. On Saturday, February 1st, police responded to a report of 3 motor vehicle collision at Bunting Road and Ridgeview Avenue in the city of St. Catharines. Investigation determined that a 45-year-old male was operating a GMC Sierra pickup truck southbound on Bunting Road at a high rate of speed. While passing an uninvolved vehicle, the GMC entered the northbound lane of Bunting Road and struck a northbound Volkswagen Jetta head-on that was being operated by a 29-year-old male. The Volkswagen was redirected by the force of the collision and subsequently struck a northbound Chevrolet tow truck that was being operated by a 42-year-old male. The GMC and the Volkswagen were demolished as a result of the collision. Drivers of both the GMC and Volkswagen had to be extricated by emergency services personnel and were transported to hospital with life-threatening injuries. The injuries to both drivers have since been downgraded from life-threatening, and both are now at home recovering. The driver of the Chevrolet sustained no physical injury, and there were no passengers in any of the vehicles involved. And this collision remains ongoing by our collision reconstruction unit. On February 3rd, our officers responded to a report of a pedestrian who had been struck by a motor vehicle on Mountain Road near Elm Tree Road in the town of Grimsby. Investigation determined that a 34-year-old female was walking near the center of the roadway on Mountain Road during nighttime hours. Also at this time, a Toyota Corolla being operated by a 63-year-old female was traveling southbound on Mountain Road when it struck the pedestrian. The pedestrian sustained life-threatening injuries and was transported by EMS to an out-of-town hospital. The sole occupant of the Toyota did not sustain any physical injuries. While the pedestrian's injuries have since been downgraded from life-threatening, her injuries are still considered serious, and she remains in hospital. And again, this collision remains under investigation by our collision reconstruction unit. Just a few items in the news. A joint investigation involving the Niagara Regional Police Service, the Ontario Provincial Police, Provincial Weapons Enforcement Unit, and the Canada Border Services Agency has concluded into the illegal importation of prohibited weapons. The investigation commenced in early February 2020 when a prohibited firearm suppressor device was intercepted and seized at the CBSA International Mail Processing Center in Toronto. On February 19, 2020, investigators from the NRPS, OPP, Provincial Weapons Enforcement Unit, and the CBSA, with the assistance of our 2-district street crime unit and our emergency task unit, executed a search warrant at the Fort Erie residence in the area of Bel Air Boulevard and Dominion Road. A 26-year-old male was arrested and charged with several criminal code offenses related to the possession and importation of prohibited devices, as well as drug-related charges. Just an update with regards to the downtown St. Catharines shooting that you had alluded to earlier, Chair. Detectives from the 1 District St. Catharines Detective Office, along with Special Investigation Services Unit, have continued to investigate the shooting incident that occurred in downtown St. Catharines on September 29th that resulted in 6 persons being shot. A 6-month investigation into this incident has now concluded, with further arrests and charges filed. With the assistance of the Niagara Regional Police Emergency Task Unit, the Hamilton Police Emergency Response Unit, multiple search warrants were executed on March 30th and April 2nd. As a result, 4 additional individuals were arrested for their alleged involvement in the shooting and/or alleged criminal acts discovered throughout the investigation. Investigators would like to thank the public and the media for their cooperation and support over the course of this investigation. We would also like to thank the York Regional Police, the Toronto Police Service, the Hamilton Police for their assistance throughout this investigation. As a result of their tremendous work, the investigation resulted in a total of 9 arrests and 97 criminal charges have been laid, and this matter is now before the courts as well. On Sunday, April the 12th, 2020, 2 district uniform officers were called to a hotel in the area of Beaver Dams Road and Cato Road regarding a robbery with a gun. Officers attended the hotel and determined that 3 masked men attempted to force their way into a hotel room. The male victim in the room saw that one of the suspects was carrying a gun. The commotion caused other hotel guests to be alerted, and the suspects fled from the scene. The victim was not physically injured in this incident. The suspects jumped a nearby fence into the backyard of a neighboring home. A second male victim was playing in the backyard with his children. As the second victim attempted to protect his children, one of the suspects slashed him with a knife. Another suspect pointed a gun at the second victim. The suspects fled the scene to an awaiting car. The victim was treated at the scene and transported to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Officers located the car a short distance away. The persons in the car were arrested and weapons recovered. The investigation subsequently led officers to another Niagara Falls hotel. Having received information the involved suspects were in a hotel room, our emergency task unit and crisis negotiators were called in to assist. After negotiating with the persons in the room, they agreed to surrender themselves to the officers, and as a result of the investigation, 4 persons were arrested and charged with numerous offenses, with a 5th suspect that was outstanding. On April 18th, 2 district uniform officers responded to a report of a residential break-and-enter in Niagara Falls. The homeowners located a male inside their home. The suspect ran from the house into the neighboring backyards, and a member of our K-9 unit, along with police service dog Bronson, attended the scene, accompanied by 2 district uniform officers. A track of the suspect conducted that led to the backyard of Pamela Drive near Alpine Drive. Police service dog Bronson located the suspect hiding near a shed. The 5th outstanding suspect was this male, and a 42-year-old male has been arrested and charged with numerous offenses. And that concludes my report at this time. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Sounds like a very busy time, and I have to make some notes that the homicide back on March 29th, if I recall from the press release that went out, was work from our police service, and I suspect some assistance from Toronto. If I'm not mistaken, was solved in 7 days. So hats off to our detective units and officers on the scene that handled that in what I would consider extremely professional and timely manner. It just also goes to show that our members are again out there doing their job and keeping our region safe during this time of pandemic. So again, my hats off to our members, both police and civilian. They're working tirelessly day in and day out, again, keeping our community safe. Board members have any comments of the Chief's report, please? Not hearing any on that. We have a fairly full agenda today. We have a consent component, which starts at items number 39 and ends at number 65. I would leave a mover and seconder to move that in block, and then we will entertain questions on that one. So mover, please, on the consent component.
So moved, Henry D'Angelo.
Thank you, Member D'Angelo. A seconder?
Kevin Gibson.
Thank you, Member Gibson. And before we get into questions on these items, I wanted to point out that Board Member Tara McKendrick has a teleconference related to her activities, and we'll leave our board meeting around 9:30 for approximately an hour, and we'll come back on when she is available. So, Member McKendrick, when you have to leave, your as a priority call for you, and I would just drop off the line at that time. Okay. So, entertaining questions on the consent component. If you would ask, just let me know what reference number it is, what report number it is, and we will proceed with that. Any questions on the consent?
Mr. Chair, Member Dave Eek, at the appropriate time I would like to comment regarding Report 65, the annual report for youth crime.
Okay. Any other board members? So Member Eek,
Chair Bob Gill, I have a number of questions on 3 different items.
Okay. Bob, I will just ask you to wait for a second. I will ask Member Eek to go ahead with item number 65.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I like to provide are my comments after reading this report. I I found it a very positive report showing youth involvement programs and partnerships within the community for prevention awareness among youth crime and developing engagement opportunities with youth right across the region. And this is run by the NRP, and it's reflective of their progress and impact on slide 6 or page 6 of the report that shows the decline in youth-involved criminal incidents. And therefore, I just want to summarize that the work of the NRP reflects really a proactive potential impact on future crime reduction. And so we're looking forward and trying to lay the appropriate groundwork with our youth, and I thank them for this report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Member Gale, you had a number of items. If you just let me know what number it is, please.
Sure. Item number 41 is the first one, and that's the public complaints one. And this is a comment and a compliment to the chief. I see the chief, your name is at the bottom as done by yourself, but this report is fulsome. I think it's great for the public, and especially on page 4, it shows the comment on number NR 20-14, where the person made the quote, "If the officer had just used his cuffs right away, I would have given up sooner instead of trying to get up." It kind of shows you the lack of intelligence, or it shows the public the lack of intelligence and cooperation of the people. But I'm really satisfied, Chief, with this report and in how some officers were talked to about things. It's very fair. We aren't perfect, but you've laid it out very well. So that's just a compliment on this, and I hope the public sees that comment if you haven't been a police officer ever, then you don't understand some of the comments made by some of these people and how they don't cooperate. So I'll leave it to you, Chair, now. If anybody else has any comments on this report, I have other ones.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members on number 41? Not hearing any. Member Gale, your next one?
Number 43, which is Brock University. Pardon me, I'll scroll over to it. Chief, through you, Chair, to the Chief, the criminal charges at Brock University have gone, I'm trying to find it here on the chart, up to 43 from 34. Chief, could you please give us an example of the type of criminal offenses and what the most severe criminal offenses would have been at Brock, if you have that? And do we get concerned when in the space of January to March 2020, they've gone from 34 to 43 criminal offenses at Brock University? Do you have a talk with them there and see what we can do, or are you as concerned as I am about this, Chief?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the types of incidents that we respond to along with Brock Security for criminal-related matters are often related to assaults and disturbances that may occur, drug-related offenses that may occur as well. We have a really good working relationship that we've established over the years with our colleagues and friends at Brock University Security. One district Staff Sergeant Bill Harris connects on a very regular basis with Brock Security and work very closely in trying to solve and resolve the issues. The number of incidents are, I think, consistent given the fact that they're close to the size of a small city. Quite frankly, they're between 18,000 and 20,000 students. Again, although concerning, it's not significantly out of character for the number of individuals that are at Brock.
Okay, Chief, I defer to your opinion on that, so I accept that. I have no other comments on this item, Ken. I have another one.
Okay, just for a second, I'm looking at that report as well. I believe the top line of the criminal offenses is 34 in 2020, and the bottom line at 43 was for last year.
I
there's a reference
apologize.
at the
I'm
bottom
sorry.
of that.
Okay.
Says the criminal offenses actually decreased by 21%. I know when it's in black and white, it's not as clear as I believe that report comes to us in color. So, but I believe it's actually a decrease.
Okay, that's my mistake then. It doesn't have the year of each one, but I took it for granted that the first year was the previous year. So
It's coloration of the black and white report, and I see that here. If you look at the bottom, there's a color code, but it's not that clear. Bob, Member Gale, if you want to go ahead with your second item or third item.
okay, that would be item number 44 on the overtime. Pardon me for going through to it. So I have a question through to the chief or his deputies, whoever he decides. The major investigations went up 800 more overtime hours. I know the chief in his report mentioned about the 6-person shooting in September, and I imagine some of the hours were spilled over to October. So my questions are, it's 800 more overtime hours. For the year, were 3,000 more overtime hours, and this is regards to major investigations. I'm wondering, Chief, for the public and for my behalf, benefit too, can you give us some examples of some of the major investigations you had October to December, if you can? And again, I'm deferring to you, should we be concerned about these 800 more overtime hours for major investigations? I know when I was chair before, we used to go by when I was talking to Jeff McGuire years ago, we just threw a dart out there. He told me $1 million for a major investigation, but it depends on the investigation. There's a lot of variables, I get it. But what major investigations did we have, Chief, from October to December that would really spike that up, 800 more overtime hours for that? Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Member Gale. I'm going to defer to Deputy Chief Flynn, who can provide some details on that.
Through you, Chief. The shooting on St. Paul Street in September of 2019 was largely the driver for those major case overtime hours. As the Chief pointed out, there were 9 arrests made in total, the 97 criminal charges, and it really, because of the way we approach these investigations, and obviously because of the magnitude of this one, it began in September of 2019, but from an investigative perspective, it ended, last week, not including the fact that we'll be in court for some time to come, but it is it's really about the application of major case management, the immediate and large-scale deployment of investigative resources over the first days, the first weeks, and really in this case, the first months of the investigation. The costs in this category are completely driven by emerging events. And it really is the way that we attack this type of emerging event. It's, sort of an all hands on deck. It's every investigative resource that we have in the organization that we can apply. So it's outside of the homicide unit. It's outside of our intelligence units. It's every detective office that we can reasonably help devote, staffing to an event like this. And really, when we talk about that major case management model, it's about front-end loading. It's about getting information, collecting evidence before it disappears, identifying people before they're, that's no longer an option that's available to us. And that's really a driver that we saw entirely through the last quarter of last year and even early into this year.
So thanks for that, Deputy Flynn. Is there any other examples of major investigations in that time frame? I know that's big enough, and that probably sucked this overtime hours up. And also, my second question is, the civilian major investigation hours went through the roof too. How would that relate to? Just give examples, please, of how that would relate to this crime as well. Why it went through the roof. please.
Sure. I can't off the top of my head think of the other investigations, although I can certainly look back and dig into it further for you. However, with respect to the question on the civilian piece, there's a lot of civilian support that goes into an investigation like this, and really just to name a few, firstly, I mentioned major case management. That comes with an investigative software component, PowerCase or Zanalis, that is used in every situation. So we do have civilian support in there. And then the other piece that's probably larger than that would be the civilian members who are in and who support our forensic services unit, including, as the board is well aware, the video component, the electronic component of investigations has just blossomed or become so much larger in the last decade. And there are hundreds and thousands of hours of video in relation to incidents like this that are seized, and it's seized or obtained through warrant or given to us by people who have video, and it's a massive undertaking to go through that video and to see if we have any evidence that may be related to an investigation.
Okay, thank you for that. And when I was originally asking this question, I didn't think of the September shooting bearing into October to December, and that solves, I can see how that's justifying all the overtime hours from both fronts. So at your convenience, if there's any other major investigations, I don't want you to waste a lot of time you can think of, just let me know, will you please, so I can just be more comfortable with it. Thank you.
Member Gale, any additional items?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Other board members on any of the items within the consent component?
Hi, Chair Henry D'Angela.
Member D'Angelo, you go ahead, please.
I have a couple, just on reports 42.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a chart on page 2 that details the authorized strength and then the actual strength. There's a couple categories where the inspectors and staff sergeants, the actuals are greater than the authorized. I know the chief spoke during his opening remarks about succession planning. Is this one of the reasons why there's more of the actual than the authorized? Maybe if the chief can just comment on that.
Chief, go ahead.
Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we currently have 2 additional inspectors over our authorized strength, and again, that's to supplement. We have 1 inspector who has been out of the workplace and recently returned with some health issues, and another one we're doing a job shadowing because of a pending retirement. So again, there's that mentoring piece that's taking place. And then with regards to the staff sergeant, we have 1 additional staff sergeant that provides oversight to our real-time operations center, which is not part of our authorized strength.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, Chief, for the comments. I have a couple more items, Chair.
Yes, go ahead. I was just going to comment. I had some questions on the authorized strength as well, so that's been answered. Member D'Angelo, go ahead with the next one.
It's item 46, annual report, use of auxiliaries and volunteers. And it's
Go ahead.
It's on page 4. I'm just getting to it on my computer here. It's in regards to the chart. When I look at the chart, which is on page 4 of the report, and I'll give you an example. Like in 2014, it had auxiliaries at the start of the year were 67, 6 had resigned, 4 were hired as constables, so at the end of the year you had 57. But then the opening number for 2015 is 69. Should that not be the 57 that was ending in 2014? That's just an example. So some of the numbers don't add. Just wondering if I'm just missing something there, if someone could make a comment through you, Chair.
Chief, I'll turn that back to you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think what's not being captured is the recruiting drive that is going on each year to augment the numbers. It gives us the number that's at the start of the year, the number that we lose throughout the course of the year, but I think that's the missing component, and that's why you see the numbers at the beginning of each number or at the beginning of each year jump.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, maybe just a suggestion. Could we add another column in there for new recruits so that we can balance the numbers off? And then it'll show us. You have to almost do the math in your head to see that that's happening.
Yes, that's not a problem. We can do that.
Okay, that's excellent. That's all I had on that one. And I have one further report.
Go ahead, please.
It's item number 59. Which is the annual report, stolen and smuggled firearms.
Go ahead.
And it's, I'm just getting to it. It's regarding the chart showing the seized firearms and then the amounts sent for disposal. And I'm just trying to get it up in front of me here, if you could bear with me. My question to you, Mr. Chair, as I'm trying to pop it up here, the amount that are seized is quite larger than the amount that are disposed of. Can I ask, through you, Chair, what happens to the difference of the firearms that are there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, bearing in mind that some of these incidents take place over an extended period of time, court processes can be over 2, 3, in some cases 4 years period. We're only able to destroy the firearms if we get an appropriate order from the court. In some cases, the firearms are returned to the lawful owners depending on the outcome of the court case. And in other cases, when it's appropriate to do so, they're destroyed in accordance with the court orders.
Through you, Mr. Chair, then can there be another, like if there's a substantial amount that are returned to the owners for proper methodology there, because it's sort of, I'm just looking at the chart now, like the seized amounts are extremely large compared to what's actually disposed of, and if you look at the 4 years, you've collected over 2,400 firearms, and only about, I'm just doing quick math here, only about maybe 1,000 of them are destroyed. So that means there's about 1,400 other firearms. Maybe if there's some sort of description of if they've been returned to the lawful owners, that could be added there so you could see less of a discrepancy from what's been seized and what's been actually destroyed, or sent for disposal, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly provide some greater clarification. I know from an accountant perspective, you would like to see the numbers add up, obviously, and we'll do our best, bearing in mind the multiple years, and it may be a narrative that provides that, but we'll add that clarity.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Chief. That would be excellent. I know through your description of the multiple years that they'll never add up because of timing issues, but a little bit more clarity would be very helpful. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, that's it for me for items under the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members on any items? Not hearing any. I will just comment on item 45, the acoustical hailing device. Compliment the service on providing that report. Again, good use of a device that I think we acquired about 4 or 5 years ago. And last comment I would make is on item number 49, dealing with the child pornography report. Just some comments on that. I saw a reference to some concerns that police services across Canada are having during the pandemic time, and the more use of various telecommunication platforms, more of a deal with the video component of these platforms, that they were seeing some increases in child pornography issues, and I'm going to hope that the service is following up with various national or provincial policing bodies to keep a check on that. So those are basically the only comments that I had on this. Unless I hear anything from board members, I do have a mover and seconder.
Kevin would just like to speak here, Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Member Gibson.
Okay, just coming back to item 59 to Member D'Angelo's point there about the firearms and the recording and that. I think, personally, I think that amount of record keeping is adequate. The request there was to break that down, and having lived a little bit in that world, it's very challenging to break those numbers down to a finer level of accounting. The disposition of firearms, like the chief said, there's court, there's giving them back, there's destruction orders, there's quite a bit to that. To break that right down to a finite level is really asking our police service to do, I think, quite a bit more work than is really required. Knowing that, you know, the discrepancy there is based basically on all those items, you know, court, guns given back, destruction orders, etc. So I think there, in my opinion, it's a little bit too much of an ask to break that down any more than what it's already broken down. I think from my, maybe it's just because I have a different understanding, but from my perspective, I see what's going on there, and it's a lot more work for their records people to keep track of all that, and I don't know if it's fair to ask that. So that's my comment.
Chief, are we adding a burden, an undue burden from what Member D'Angelo asked?
Just in furtherance to Member Gibson's comments, if it does provide some level of comfort for Member D'Angelo, we are required to provide an audit to the ministry on an annual basis with regards to firearms that come into our possession. So there is that added check and balance that does take place. You know, with regards to the narrative, we may be able to provide, again, I don't want to overburden our people, but we can, I think, provide a little better narrative to assist in identifying why the numbers wouldn't necessarily add up. But in order to provide a detailed, balanced spreadsheet, it may be difficult.
Well, if you can provide a little bit more detail without overburdening how all this gets filtered and reported, that would be, I think, a step in the right direction. The last thing, I think, as a board, we want to add additional cycles to this. It does provide us with the seized items, the ones that have been reported, etc., and the ones that have been sent for disposal. But if some additional information can be provided in the annual report on this, I think that would go a long way to answer some of the concerns that have been raised this morning on this one item. So if you could take that back as a work in progress.
Chair, Member D'Angelo, I would be satisfied with additional narrative. I don't need a detailed summary spreadsheet that could take hours and hours. A little bit more narrative would suffice to answer the questions that I brought forward.
I think that sounds like a fair approach, Chief.
And Chair from Kevin.
Yes.
Yeah, that was simply my point. Maybe I overthought that we were looking for a very detailed which direction, you know, all these guns are going, you know, by the number, you know, exact number, which is to me a huge amount of work and really for not any great benefit. But in a slightly more enhanced recognition of where these different firearms are going and what status they're at would definitely be helpful. But perhaps I thought it was we were looking for too much, because it is quite a bit of work to try to keep track of all that and collate it, and it doesn't really produce that too much more for us in the end. So thank you.
Okay. Sounds like a good move. Unless there's any other items, as I said before, we do have a mover and seconder. Then I would like to move the item as a received for information, which is consent items number 39 through number 65. Unless someone is voting against it, if they would reference that now. Not hearing from any board members, then I will conclude that this has now been voted in favor to receive for information. So under new business items, which is items number 66, this is the annual report of the police service. It is actually for 2018. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the agenda, please. A mover?
So moved, member Dave Eek.
Okay, and the seconder is?
Bill Steele?
Thank you, Bill. Any comments on the annual report? The only comment that I would have on this is, keeping in mind this is for 2018, so that is a year and 4 months ago. I was hoping that this would be issued in a more timely fashion. I'm a bit concerned that it has taken well over a year to produce this. I know the gentleman who is responsible for actually creating this was off on sick leave for a number of months, but I'm hoping that the 2019 report can make it to the board for approval sometime prior to August. I think our bylaw actually states it's supposed to be in our hands like now, but there's a lot of things in play right now dealing with a pandemic. But if we could have some recognition from the service that the 2019 report makes it to the board's hand for August, and I would hope some comments back from the chief in that area before I call for a vote.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just with regards to timelines, if I could provide some assistance. We're a little handcuffed in that we're dependent upon data that we acquire through Stats Canada. We typically don't get that data available to us until July. And I certainly acknowledge that the report is not as timely as we would have liked. Dr. Divers, who normally puts this report together for us, is often drawn in 6 or 7 different directions, and one of the major projects that he was involved in 2019 was the frontline workload study that he was compiling a lot of data for us to assist in our budget preparation. So competing demands played a role in that. We will do our best to get the 2019 annual report to you. I'm not going to necessarily guarantee we can get it to you by August, but we'll within the 2020 calendar as best we can, so that we don't run into this overlap situation again.
I think from a board perspective, I think we would appreciate getting it in the calendar year, and that. So if you can take that again back as an item to work towards, that would be really appreciated. And I like, the report format is great. Excellent use of the photographs this year, and the tables are very clear statistically in that. And it's a good report, and I also will note that upon our approval today, this will be posted on the website, and as well it will be distributed electronically to Regional Council by way of a link. And I also concur that we are no longer in the business of printing this as a physical hard copy, which again shows our commitment to environmental concerns. So all good things there. So I have a mover and seconder, unless there's additional questions from board members. Not hearing any. Anyone opposed to moving forward with the annual report? Not hearing any on that, then I will move that this has been approved by the board, so that's item number 66. We will now move to item number 67, which is the Ontario Police Video Training Alliance. It is the 2020 membership contract, which comes to us every year. The board is going to authorize the Chief of Police to enter into a contractual agreement with the OPVATA for our membership, and further that the Chief be authorized to make minor adjustments to the contract as may be necessary in consultation with board counsel. I need a mover and seconder, please, on this.
So moved.
Kevin will move it.
Oh, Henry D'Angelo will second it.
Okay, and who was the mover?
Kevin?
Thank you, Member Gibson. Any questions from board members on item number 67? I will comment that this organization has been probably leading us in outstanding video and training video for the entire province of Ontario. If I'm not mistaken, probably goes back to almost 1990, the late 1990s, if I'm not mistaken. And they certainly do an excellent job. Any comments from board members on this? Not hearing any. Anyone wishing to vote against our proceeding with this? Not hearing any on that. And I will conclude that item number 67 is approved as it was moved and seconded. So that moves on to item number 68, which is a special fund request for the Niagara Regional Pipe Band. The report is in front of you. I will also comment, we have added to the actual agenda document a paragraph talks about the fact that these various special fund requests are not coming out of the public. 68 is for the pipe band at $2,500. 69 is the International Police men's hockey team at $700, and number 70 is the Dale Racine Educational Bursary in the amount of I don't see one. Anyway, I'll ask our executive director for that one. But in block, I could have a mover and seconder, please, in block.
Bob Gale.
Thank you. Seconded by?
Kevin Gibson.
Thank you, Member Gibson. So the only one I have a question on is number 70, and I just have to pull that up on my screen. And that is for a read that as basically they're not asking, they are basically they have raised funds. I'll ask our executive director, is that the conclusion I'm making is correct?
Yes, this is Deb Reed through you, Mr. Chair. You are correct. In accordance with our board bylaw, the service has to come forward to seek permission from the board in order for them to hold events that would collect fundraising money.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. So board members, any questions on items 68, 69, and 70?
Chair, Bill Steele, just a quick question on item 69.
Go ahead, please.
It shows a date of February 27th, 28th, 2020. Are we paying for the tournament that's already happened, or is that a typo, and should it be the tournament that may be being held in 2021?
No, that's actually it. It is correct. That has taken place.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, is that the one? No, that's not the one. It has taken place. It's just because we didn't have a board meeting to address this back in March.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other, any other questions on this item? So I have a mover in block from Member Gale and seconded by Member Gibson on this to approve the three items. unless I hear someone voting against it. And I will concur that these items have now moved forward and are approved. So under new business, we have SIU in-camera reports that were voted on back in February 27th as part of the confidential board meeting are now coming back for public. That's item number 71. There are 7 SIU reports that have come forward in that, and it will be released for public information. I need a mover and seconder on item number 71.
Chair, again, would you like to move them in block?
We are actually, because item number 71 incorporates all 7 of those.
Okay, thanks.
It is like a block of those SIU reports coming forward.
Moved by member Dave Eek.
Okay? Seconded by?
Member Henry D'Angela.
Thank you. So, any comments on those SIU cases, all 7 of those being released? Any member at this time voting against the release of those reports? Not hearing any, then this has been moved by member Eek, seconded by member D'Angela, but this is now approved and these can be released for public. Our last item, and I'll go to new business after this, is item number 72. This is from a teleconference confidential meeting we had at the end of March. This is for a contract to deal with the board moving to an electronic meeting system and software. Item number C67 back in March. The contract is being on a subscription agreement with eScribe software to automate and manage the board's agendas, reports, effective on March 27th for a 3-year term. And further, that the executive director be authorized to execute the required documents on behalf of the board for this item. This was approved back then and was moved. It would be taken to the public for release today. I need a mover and seconder, please.
Bill Steele will move.
Thank you, member Steele.
Kevin Gibson will second.
Member Gibson, any comments on this report? I must say this is a move in the right direction. It's been a long time coming, and I'm glad to see that we are doing this, and also we obtained what I would consider a fairly, an extremely good price for this. So let's,
Chair,
any other
Bill,
board members have comments?
Yeah, Bill Steele, just as Bob, Kevin, and I would attest to, the eScribe works very well. We use it obviously at the region, as the report says, and it's easy to move through during a meeting as far as each piece of business coming forward. So yeah, it is a good product.
Yes, and I can also report that since we did our sort of environmental scan of police agencies, another police agency in Western Canada, I believe, has now joined using eScribe as well. So we're not alone in using this, and I know the region has had a tremendously good success with this product, and I think you've been on it for probably 5 or 6 years now. So any other comments from board members? Anybody voting, anyone wishes to vote against this? Not hearing that, then this is now approved, as it was moved by member Steele and seconded by member Gibson. We're up to getting close to adjournment. I just want to make a comment that as long as the pandemic restrictions are in place, the board will conduct its meetings virtually through this format of teleconference. The audio recording will be posted to the Niagara Regional Police Service Board YouTube account for members of the public to access. And if there are any questions or concerns, please contact our Executive Director of the Police Services Board, and that can be done by calling 905-688-4111, and the extension is 5170. or you can email us at psb@niagarapolice.ca. And I will also add that issues regarding public concern over individuals or businesses violating any of the terms of the emergency pandemic orders should be first directed to your local bylaw enforcement agencies within towns and cities. And failing that, call the police non-emergency number at 905-688-4111. And keeping in mind that this is a public health emergency, public health is your first point of contact dealing with any social distancing or other procedures on the region's website or the Government of Ontario, or certainly through Public Health Canada's website, which is canada.ca/coronavirus, if I'm not mistaken. Any other new business from board members? Chief, any final words from you on the public side of the agenda today?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, then I will ask one person to have the word to say adjourned. I need that, please.
Adjourned?
Thank you very much. So I will note now at 10:05 that the public session is now adjourned, and we will reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you.